Like all continents, South America has had its share of brutal dictators. In the future, we plan to look at the worst dictators of every continent, except Australia and Antarctica, of course. But for now, we've put together a list of the 5 worst South American dictators. Number 5 is Alfredo Stroessner of Paraguay, who was a Paraguayan military dictator who seized power through a U.S.-backed military coup. Stroessner ruled under what amounted to martial law for virtually his entire tenure, and used the threat of communism as a justification for his own undisputed control over Paraguay. During his time in power, Stroessner's Paraguay became a haven for Nazi war criminals, including Josef Mengele. But this is just a tiny fraction of the travesties committed by his regime. While Stroessner's rule saw more stability than any living Paraguayan had known, it came at high cost. Corruption in Paraguay was so endemic and widespread that Stroessner himself admitted that Paraguayan officials were immensely corrupt during his regime. On top of this, Paraguay's human rights record was considered one of the poorest in South America. During Stroessner's time as the dictator of Paraguay, an estimated 3,000 to 4,000 people were murdered, thousands more were imprisoned and tortured, while countless others simply disappeared. It has even been alleged that his secret police would bathe their captains in human excrement and shock them with electric cattle prods while torturing them. The secretary of the Paraguayan Communist Party was even dismembered alive with a chainsaw, while Stroessner listened to the ordeal over the phone. After apparently taking a liking to hearing the screams of dissidents over the telephone, Stroessner ordered that recordings of the screams of tortured dissidents be played over the phone to their family members. Eventually, however, Alfredo Stroessner was forced into exile in Brazil, where he spent the last 17 years of his life before dying in 2006. Number 4 is Alberto Fujimori of Peru. In comparison to other South American dictators, Alberto Fujimori wasn't so much brutal as he was hopelessly corrupt. While analysts have credited Fujimori with successfully crushing communist insurgents in Peru, albeit through the use of death squads, as well as bringing economic stability to Peru, he was also unfortunately one of the world's worst kleptocrats. In its Global Corruption Report of 2004, Transparency International listed Fujimori as leading the 7th most corrupt government of the modern age, and estimated that through corruption, Fujimori embezzled over $600 million while many Peruvians lived in abject poverty. Fujimori ended his presidency by fleeing Peru for Japan, amid a major corruption scandal and allegations of human rights violations. However, he was later extradited back to Peru and is currently serving time in prison on charges of corruption and human rights violations. Number 3 is Augusto Pinochet of Chile.
Más allá de las diferencias que a veces nos apasionan,
who dramatically seized control of Chile during a U.S.-backed military coup in 1973 that disposed the democratically elected Salvador Allende. Over the course of 20 years, Pinochet ruled Chile with an iron fist and ordered the deaths of thousands of suspected leftists and communists. Pinochet's legacy is mired in controversy. To his supporters, he is the man who saved Chile from communism and put it on the path to modernity. To his detractors, he was an autocratic thug who ordered countless innocents to be put to death. Shortly after Pinochet's coup, Chile's new military government banned all political parties and rounded up thousands of people and held them in a stadium where many were killed on the spot. Pinochet's regime would later go on to commit egregious human rights abuses. According to a report that included testimony from more than 30,000 people, Pinochet's government killed at least 3,197 people and tortured another 29,000 Chileans. However, Pinochet's repression was not met without resistance, as he frequently faced assassination attempts, where in one instance his motorcade was ambushed by insurgents. Pinochet's bulletproof Mercedes-Benz vehicle was struck by a rocket during this attack, but it failed to explode, and Pinochet suffered only minor injuries. This resistance only caused Pinochet to clamp down even harder on his opposition. His secret police struck back and redoubled their efforts, and their methods of torture only became more bizarre. Pinochet's secret police became infamous for rounding up suspected communists, loading them into waiting helicopters, and then taking them up to high altitudes to hurl them overboard to their deaths. By the time of Pinochet's death on the 10th of December in 2006, about 300 criminal charges were still pending against Pinochet, and his legacy of anti-communism, aggressive privatization of industries, and harsh repression has remained a subject of fierce debate to this day. Number 2 is Luis Garcia Mesa Tejada of Bolivia. Garcia Mesa began his political career when he overthrew Bolivia's first democratically elected female president during a bloody military coup that is known today as the Cocaine Coup d'etat. Like many other South American dictators, Garcia Mesa also enjoyed close ties with former Nazis. Garcia Mesa's nefarious power grab was infamously backed up by former SS officer and Nazi war criminal Klaus Barbie and the Italian neo-fascist Stefano Delle Chiaie. The Garcia Mesa regime, while brief, was best known for its extreme brutality. After seizing power, Tejada immediately outlawed all political parties, exiled opposition leaders, and repressed trade unions. Some 1,000 people are estimated to have been killed by the Bolivian army and security forces in a span of only 13 months. And Garcia Mesa's regime even openly engaged in state-sponsored drug trafficking, which is usually a pursuit reserved for drug cartels and other criminal organizations. Eventually, however, Garcia Mesa was forced to resign and was tried and convicted for the serious human rights violations committed by his regime. After his conviction, Garcia Mesa reportedly lived in considerable comfort while in prison, with a barbecue, gym, telephone, sauna, and even an unusually large prison cell. However, these privileges were later revoked in response to very public protests from human rights organizations and his regime's former victims. And number 1 is Jorge Rafael Videla of Argentina.
Por las causas y los fines esenciales de los actos consumados a lo largo de una gestión que al cerrarse quedará abierta al juicio.
Who came to power through a coup d'etat that deposed Argentina's civilian government and started decades of military rule. Today, Videla's regime is best known for sheltering Nazi fugitives, large-scale human rights abuses, and crimes against humanity, all of which directly took place under his rule. These abuses included kidnappings, forced disappearances, widespread torture, and extrajudicial murders, as well as secret concentration camps. According to human rights groups, thousands of Argentinians, quote-unquote, disappeared while in the custody of the police. Some were even drugged into a stupor, loaded into military aircraft, stripped naked, and then thrown into the Atlantic Ocean to drown in what became infamously known as death flights. Videla would later take full responsibility for his army's actions during his rule by saying, quote, "I accept the responsibility as the highest military authority during the internal war. My subordinates followed my orders," end quote. Videla even nearly started a war with neighboring Chile on a whim, with only Pope John II's last-minute intervention preventing a conflict between the two South American nations. All in all, during Videla's regime, Argentina's foreign debt increased fourfold, and the disparities between the upper class and lower classes became much more pronounced. Videla's dictatorship ended in a massive devaluation of Argentina's currency, and one of the worst financial crises in Argentine history. After being ousted and being convicted of numerous crimes, Videla was sentenced to life in prison and died after suffering a fall in a shower. For more top lists just like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you want to keep up with our latest videos, hit that bell icon on mobile. Or if you're on desktop, hit the gear icon and check Send Me All notifications. It really helps us out. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next time.